Good evening, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the Fifth Amendment. Unfortunately, it looks like a couple of people are behind. We're going to get you all caught up next time, so I don't have too many videos to show you all tonight, but that's not a big deal. We'll get it going. So let's start with the first one.
Do you reside?
Sorry, just 1 second. Let me put myself on mute so you don't have to hear the background noise while the video plays.
I'm not asking any more questions.
Hello, TikTokers, and welcome to Real Law Talk. Somebody sent me that video, and I had to comment on it because I think we're missing a very big point about the Fifth Amendment. Go watch the video before you listen to my comments. The Fifth Amendment, which is the amendment that allows you to remain silent, applies to every single question that the state may have, what law enforcement may have, during the investigations phase and during the prosecution phase, unless the defendant testifies on the stand. So questions like, where do you live? I plead the Fifth. There seems to be this thinking that it's only about the question of, did you do it, or where were you? No, what's your name? I plead the Fifth. When you look at Congress, if you look at these go to the YouTube and just Google people taking the Fifth at Congress, they literally say nothing. The congressmen say, what's your name? And they go, I take the Fifth. Because you can't answer any questions. If you choose to, you have the right not to answer a single question, even the most innocuous ones. Because what police do is they use the innocuous questions to lead you down a road. Or maybe the answer that they don't have to tell you what they're investigating. So maybe an answer is innocuous of, I live in Manhattan, gets you into trouble. So always remain silent, exercise your right to counsel, and that's Real Law Talk.
So, Mr. Trump, I take it you are not going to answer any questions about your preparation today with your counsel. Is that correct?
Then, should I say this, or should I respond to that?
Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth
For all
Amendment.
of the reasons provided in my
Horrible.
answer, which is
Horrible.
incorporated
The mob
herein
takes the Fifth.
in its entirety.
If you're innocent, why are you
I
taking the
decline
Fifth
to answer
Amendment?
the question.
Taking the Fifth Amendment, like you see on the mob, right? You see the mob takes the Fifth. If you're
Okay, that should fix it. Now we should be able to see the next video.
I decline to answer the question.
So, Mr. Trump, I take it you are not going to answer any questions about your preparation today with your counsel. Is that correct?
Should I say this, or should I respond to that? For all of the reasons provided in my answer, which is incorporated herein in its entirety, I decline to answer the question.
You are currently the president of the Trump Organization. Is that correct?
Same answer.
Who were the trustees when the trust was first founded?
Alright, and this goes on for a bit, so finally, we're going to watch the beginning of this and then skip ahead to the end.
Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible. The mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Taking the Fifth Amendment, like you see on the mob, right? You see the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful.
It's of an unfounded, when your family asking that question, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? I was asking that question. Now I know the answer to that question. When your family, your company, and all the people in your orbit have become the targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt supported by lawyers, prosecutors, and even the fake news media, you really have no choice. Anyone in my position not taking the Fifth Amendment would be a fool, an absolute fool.
So let's now talk about what the Fifth Amendment actually says. Of course, it's very popular to see it on TV, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. There's actually a lot of rights encompassed in the Fifth Amendment. What we typically hear about is the right to remain silent, but there's so much more. What it says is that no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life, limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for a public use without just compensation. We can break these down into 5 rights. The first right is the right to an indictment. In a criminal case, you can certainly waive it, but for a federal criminal case to start, the grand jury must return an indictment. This is not a right that has been incorporated to the states. Missouri, for example, still has the concept of a preliminary hearing. But generally speaking, if you're charged with a federal offense, that federal offense must have come from the grand jury. Second, we have double jeopardy. There is a, I believe, 1990s movie by the same name. Not 1990, in the decade 1990s, not 1990, which asks the question, what would happen if somebody was convicted of murdering their spouse and found out that they were still alive? The whole concept of the double jeopardy charge is that you can only be tried once for the same offense. And I just looked it up while I was talking. It is 1999 movie with Tommy Lee Jones, Ashley Judd. It's a pretty good film, but it's completely unrealistic. And here's why. There's a couple of factors that influence the whole concept of double jeopardy. First off, it doesn't start just because you've been charged with a crime. The time when you are in jeopardy of life or limb is determined to be the time that the time that your jury is sworn in. Up until that point, they can dismiss the case. Second, and perhaps more terrifying, is that double jeopardy is going to apply to each sovereign individually. Remember, in the United States, we have dual sovereignty. We have the state and the federal government that kind of get to do their own thing. Therefore, you can be charged with distribution of a controlled substance at the federal level and also be charged at the state level. In practice, I have had 1 or 2 cases that were true double jeopardy, and typically prosecutors realize this is a big mistake and dismiss it. Self-incrimination. This is the one everybody talks about, and it's a good one. The first video we saw kind of gets it right, kind of gets it wrong. Yes, you don't have to answer most questions for the police. You do, however, have to identify yourself when asked. Most states have laws about that, and the Supreme Court of the United States has said that's okay. If a police officer asks who you are, all you really have to do is show them your ID, but you have to identify yourself upon request. That's about it. You don't have to answer other questions. You can take the Fifth Amendment. It is going to be highly suspicious and probably end up detaining you for quite some time. If the officer's like, hey, you having a good evening tonight? And you're like, I plead the Fifth. Not a great way of doing it, but that is correct. Second off, it is important to plead the Fifth Amendment. Most of the time, in the video we saw talking about the the first video, I'm sorry, frequently officers are going to ask questions that try to trip you up. At the point that they are interrogating you, that is not officers being friendly typically. They have a pretty good idea you're the person who's done it, and they want to make sure that they get enough information to convict you. Not a huge deal. It happens all the time. But if you're innocent, they might say things like, well, if you didn't have anything to hide, you'll talk. Certainly we saw Donald Trump making that statement. But realistically, smart people know that their words can be twisted and used against them, so it is always better to exercise the Fifth Amendment. Due process is a big one. That's probably the biggest one, frankly, that exists in the Fifth Amendment. You know, we have little quibbles over self-incrimination. Indictments almost always happen, but due process is huge. People have so many things that flow from that single right that it's one of the more powerful components of the Fifth Amendment. For example, you have a right to know what you've been charged with. That right on its own is fine, but when you read it with the due process law, we're saying that, hey, this whole process isn't valid unless we give you that right. If you don't know exactly what you've been charged with, because of the due process clause where it says that you can't be deprived without life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, that means that the whole trial can't really happen. So, huge right, not very well understood, but very important. And I will say this, I think the due process clause is confusing. I think most attorneys don't really understand it too. Finally, we get to just compensation. And this, for me to explain, requires me to talk just a little bit about eminent domain. Eminent domain is where the government can take over private land for public use. It typically happens with railroads. If you are in Jefferson City and have lived here for a while, or have gone to campus recently, the Lafayette interchange with the highway there, that took out quite a few homes that have been there for, 100 years or so. They built that interchange when the federal courthouse went up. And they used eminent domain to seize the property of the people who owned those buildings. Now, they don't just get to take it. The Constitution does say that they have to provide you with just compensation. Frequently, though, what's just is what we're going to fight about. Is it fair market value? Well, that seems like a reasonable place to start, but what about if we're talking about the home that's been in your family for generations? Is the $200,000 it's worth really enough to compensate you for losing all those memories? I don't know. Now that we've gone over the Fifth Amendment, next time we're going to start on the Sixth Amendment. Like I said, I want to get you guys up to date on this. If you missed Fifth Amendment, don't worry about it. Just try and turn in your Sixth Amendment videos. We are quickly running out of rights to go over, which is great because the class is coming to an end soon. Because of that, please work on your final project. If you have it ready, by all means upload it so that I can grade it and let you know what I think and what you're going to get on it, so that if you want to redo it or fix it, you can, and if you're happy with it, at least you know how your semester is going to end. Here are the links for that. Your Sixth Amendment link is this weird one ending in VXAOYTY, and the final project ends in FQN691E something. It's cut off there maybe. I think it's EI. Anyway, if you have any questions or concerns, shoot me an email. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing your Sixth Amendment videos. Thank you, and I hope you all have an excellent week. Talk to you soon. Bye.